Senate will come to order. The senators will please take their seats. Those persons not entitled to the privilege of the floor will please retire to the gallery. Madam Clerk.
Senate Bill 160, a bill relating to holding handheld personal communication devices while driving a motor vehicle report.
Senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surovell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, ladies and gentlemen, this bill is the legislation that we passed last year, I believe 36-4, to prohibit driving a moving motor vehicle with a phone in your hand. A couple things. The bill is a tiny bit different from last year. The language that was in the enactment clause has now been turned into a statute at the front of the bill, but the substance of it is the same. The actual traffic offense has not changed. But I'm not sure how much debate we need to have because I think everybody's heard this before. We have a few new people here. But just for a little history, this Senator Barker, I think, carried the first legislation to put the secondary offense on the books in 2007. 2012, we made this a primary offense, and I think that was Delegate Ben Klein and myself, and I believe Senator Norman, I believe he carried the Senate version, which made texting while driving a primary offense. And then, of course, last year, we made hands-free in a construction zone the law, thanks to the senator from Williamsburg. My motivation for this came from a case client I had back in 2012, 18-year-old young man who he was killed on Route 7. He was coming home from work, his summer job, and his car ran out of gas. And he had his flashers on the side of the road on Route 7, 6-lane road with a median in the middle, 10 at night, nobody on the highway, 500 feet of clear, straight road, and got struck from behind by a guy who didn't even hit his brakes. When they pulled the phone and did a forensic, they found the guy had been texting his ex-wife who had just left the entire way for 20 minutes. He'd sent over 20 text messages over like a 15-minute period. The police couldn't understand any explanation for how somebody could run into somebody with their hazards on, stopped on a straight road with 500 feet to see them coming unless they were staring at their phone. And that's exactly what happened. And we all know the stories that have happened since then. In Leesburg a couple years ago, we had a woman whose child was run over in a baby stroller in a parking lot by a guy. We had a woman killed in Chesterfield last year, an EMT, killed by a dump truck driver who was texting. This problem today is an epidemic. All you got to do is look to your left or your right. Where you're driving down the road, you will see somebody with a device in their hand looking at it instead of paying attention to what they're doing. Right now, the law we have on the books is completely unenforceable. If you ask any police officer or judge, whether they ever convict somebody of this or whether they ever write the ticket, the only time they ever do is if somebody confesses when they're standing there in front of them. But most police don't even waste their time because they can't prove, if somebody has their phone in their hand, they can't prove what you're doing with it. And it's absolutely critical that we pass this legislation this year. As Senator Wagner said last year, this is one of the few things that we can do that will actually save lives. So that every year, this victim list isn't going to get longer. We're not going to have more and more victims begging us to pass this legislation. So, Mr. President, having said that, I renew my motion that we pass the bill and hope the body will follow through with my recommendation.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Speak to the bill, Mr.
Senator
President.
has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too join to ask that the bill pass. As you all recall, we worked hard on this last year. We passed it in the Senate, passed the same version in the House except for one word. They ended up going into conference, and I don't know what happened, but it all just dissipated, and we were not able to pass a bill ultimately. And I want to commend the senator from Eastern Fairfax. He's been working on this longer than I have, but the time has come. Because the reality of it is this: people are so totally engrossed in their phones while they're driving cars that they are completely oblivious to the world around them. And that's a really dangerous recipe when you've got a 2-ton, 3-ton, 4-ton, 5-ton automobile or truck that you're driving down the highway at 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. I hope everybody will vote for this bill and we can finally make it into law.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard regarding Senate Bill 160? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 160 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 33, noes 7.
Ayes 33, no 7. Senate Bill 160 passes.
Senate Bill 250.